The following information is purely rumors and speculation, so take what you're about to hear with a grain of salt. With that in mind, let's talk about EA and Star Wars Battlefront 2, the former being one of the most, if not the most, contentious game publishers in the industry, and the latter being one of the most controversial games of 2017. A match made in heaven, these two. As I'm sure you're well aware by now, Battlefront 2 garnered unprecedented backlash from the gaming community, widespread coverage from media outlets around the world, and the attention of government officials on an international level. The short of it is, EA done fucked it up, and they're paying dearly for it. Now, something that's been reported here and there is how Disney isn't happy with the way EA has stained the Star Wars name with these latest controversies. As if the first Battlefront game hasn't garnered enough backlash due to a lack of a single-player campaign and a lack of content in general, Battlefront 2 really tarnished the Star Wars brand on a whole new level, just a month before The Last Jedi's highly anticipated release, no less. This was then followed by news of Visceral Games being shut down and the story-driven single-player action-adventure Star Wars game that they were making being absorbed into EA to take a new, more multiplayer-based direction, resulting in even more negative PR. So, all things considered, I'm not really all that shocked to hear reports about Disney's displeasure with EA. One such report came from Ben Fritz, a journalist working for the Wall Street Journal, who tweeted, quote, "Bob Iger did not talk to EA CEO, but he was upset about the Star Wars Battlefront 2 microtransactions debacle, and another exec, Jimmy Pitaro, expressed Disney's displeasure to EA." Following up on that, website Multiplayer First reported that their sources told them something similar, stating, quote, "According to a source that wishes to remain anonymous, Disney talked with top-level EA executives over the growing backlash," something that was corroborated by the Wall Street Journal, who reported that consumer products and interactive media boss Jimmy Pitaro sent a message to EA about their concerns regarding Star Wars Battlefront 2's bad press when it comes to loot crates and how some see it as gambling. Based on the info we received, it states that both parties agree that the Battlefront 2 microtransactions model needs to be revamped to stave off further backlash. Also, it mentions how Disney was unhappy with how long EA took effective action regarding the situation, since it has evolved enough that the backlash could potentially harm the Star Wars IP, given The Last Jedi is hitting theaters soon. Possibly the biggest thing, though, is how Disney apparently gave a less than direct threat that EA could lose the Star Wars publishing exclusivity rights if things didn't improve. The House of Mouse had concerns about the exclusivity deal with EA due to the press backlash, investigations regarding gambling, and the bad press involved. When the website reached out to EA on the matter, the only response they got was that, quote, "We are not commenting on that." Finally, website VentureBeat corroborated these reports with their own sources, stating the following in their article on the matter. Earlier today, Electronic Arts Chief Executive Officer Andrew Wilson had a phone call with Walt Disney Consumer Products and Interactive Media Chairman Jimmy Pitaro about Star Wars Battlefront 2, according to news sources familiar with the situation. A few hours after the call, players are finding out that they can no longer make in-game purchases with real money. Now, as if all that wasn't enough, the latest report suggests that Disney might already be taking steps to find other developers to make Star Wars games. The following information comes from Cinelink's editor Jordan Mason, who published an article on February 13th, 2018, titled Report, Disney Talking with Two New Game Publishers for Star Wars. As the title implies, the article discusses how, according to sources that the website came in contact with, Disney is allegedly looking for new partners to make Star Wars games. Here's what the article said. From what I've heard, Lucasfilm is upset as well and looking for other options. I've had a couple sources reach out to me about the current state of Star Wars gaming. According to them, Disney Lucasfilm higher-ups pulled EA to the principal's office to talk about what's going wrong, which is what others have reported as well. More so, they have apparently reached out to both Ubisoft and Activision about developing Star Wars games. I know what you're thinking, because I had the same thoughts. EA has a contract for the games exclusively. How could Disney get around that without breaching and causing more problems. I don't know all the technical aspects of it, but supposedly there is an addendum of some kind within the contract that would allow Disney to pull the license or shop it around if certain standards or conditions weren't being met. This type of clause isn't unheard of when dealing with big licenses, and what's bigger than Star Wars? And with all the problems and lack of games, it doesn't surprise me in the least that they're looking elsewhere. Now, if we assume that this is all true, there would be good news and bad news. The good news is that future Star Wars game would finally be pulled away from EA's grubby paws, which is never a bad thing. The bad news is that if reports are to be believed, Star Wars games would simply be handled by similarly greedy companies like Activision and Ubisoft. If I absolutely had to choose between these two though, I would without question go with Ubisoft. These days, Activision has been up there with EA in terms of shadiness, especially with how games like Destiny 2 were handled, how Call of Duty World War II's loot boxes open in front of other players to exploit jealousy, and of course how the publisher recently filed patents for a microtransactions-focused matchmaking infrastructure that forgoes fair competition in favor of maximizing profit and manipulating players into purchasing in-game items. Now, that's not to say that Ubisoft doesn't have its fair share of skeletons in their closet as well, especially with the recent introduction of loot boxes for old games like Rainbow Six Siege and Ghost Recon Wildlands, both of which have become increasingly more popular in recent months. Not to mention that they're proven liars, having stated openly that they won't include microtransactions in certain games before promptly proceeding to include microtransactions in them down the line. The cherry on top is that in their latest 2018 financial briefing, Ubisoft was very open about the fact that they intend to transition their business model to focus less on games and more on live services that can be recurrently monetized over a long period of time. But all things considered, looking at the history of companies like EA, Activision, and Ubisoft is easily the lesser of three evils, though that doesn't really say much and that could very well change in the near future. Which is why I would hope that when it comes to Star Wars games, Disney is expanding their horizons beyond the least reputable publishers in the gaming industry. I would hope that they're also reaching out to more reputable game makers like maybe one of Sony's first-party studios or companies like Bethesda or CD Projekt Red, who even with their imperfections, at the very least have a passion for quality games with integrity and aren't scared of making single-player games. But keep in mind that this is all rumors and speculation, so we're merely delving into hypotheticals and wishful thinking. While it's probably fair to say that Disney is on some level displeased with all the bad PR EA has wrought onto their precious Star Wars IP, whether they intend to go as far as searching for new partners, that's still up in the air. Though Andrew Wilson certainly seemed to insist in a recent financial briefing that EA's relationship with Disney is fine and dandy, stating, quote, "You shouldn't believe everything you read in the press. We have a tremendous relationship with Disney and we have built some amazing games together, and we have been very proactive with that relation in the service of our players. We are at a point where when we make the decision that we have the right model for players in our community, I have no doubt that we will get the support of Disney on that." Then again, executives of blatantly deceitful companies have reinforced time and again that we can only trust them as far as we can throw them. So I would hardly be surprised if it turned out that things aren't all sunshine and rainbows as Andrew Wilson would have us believe. But we don't know anything for sure at this point, so all we can do is wait and see what happens. In the meantime, I'd love to hear what studios you'd like to see make Star Wars games in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon. It is completely optional, but even donating as little as $1 a month will go a long way in helping this channel grow. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out!